This video could technically even be a 3-in-1 album review because this weekend I also listened to the new Trippie Redd album, Pegasus. Unfortunately, I don't have the strength nor wherewithal to do a full review of that album, so I'm just gonna sum it up as quick as I can. God, it is horrid. I honestly have kind of enjoyed Trippie Redd's music up to this point, and I once thought of him as one of the more interesting SoundCloud rap voices, but this guy has been in a free fall with some of his last few projects, and this is honestly his worst. Way too friggin' long at 26 tracks, boring instrumentals, lazy vocal performances that really just make Trippy sound like he's just checked out. Some of his vocal performances even feel like just rip-offs of other artists, like on the title track he sounds like he's doing a Roddy Ricch impression. The track We, one of the worst things I've ever heard out of him. And it's also a shame because this album has a pretty impressive list of features, but most of them pretty much go to waste. How he assembled a list of artists this vast and this talented as the one on this album and somehow managed to screw them over, I will never understand. But I kind of have to stretch as I say this because I feel like I haven't done this in a while. Trippie Redd's Pegasus would have gotten an awful rating if I did a full review of it. I haven't given out an awful in a really long time, but man, this is easily one of the worst things I've heard this year. Maybe if you're a hardcore Trippie Redd fan, you'll like it, but otherwise, just don't waste your time, please. Anyway, on to the proper video. Hey everyone, today it's time for another 2-in-1 album review. Again, technically 3-in-1 after what I just said about Trippie's project, but regardless, 2-in-1 review. Initially, I didn't think I'd be doing 2 albums this weekend, but hey, here we are. As you can tell by the title, these are the 2 albums that I'm gonna be covering this week. We have the new Sam Smith album, Love Goes, and the new Ariana Grande album, Positions. Initially, I thought I was only gonna be doing Sam Smith's album because this has been announced to drop for a while, and I had it on my schedule ready to go, and I knew I was going to be reviewing it. But then last week, Ariana decided to surprise us by just tweeting that her album was coming out later in the month, and lo and behold, we're here. So, per usual, you guys are going to get 2 reviews this week, and since I added the Trippie review at the beginning, you are technically getting 3 reviews for the price of 1, which is $0, so yay! As per usual, I'm kind of blabbering because I like having a thumbnail with both albums in the picture, so I think I've talked long enough, let's just get on to the proper reviews. First off, I'm going to take a look at the new Sam Smith album, Love Goes. I'm sure you guys know who Sam Smith is by now. They are an English R&B singer who has racked up a number of huge hits, awards, and accolades up to this point. I've reviewed each of Sam's previous 2 albums, In the Lonely Hour and The Thrill of It All, over on my blog, and you can check out those links in the description. And I've enjoyed both of them. I especially love The Thrill of It All. So I've been excited for whatever they were going to come through with next. However, while Sam has kept strong with putting out several singles and collaborations, including the Billboard Top 10 peaking Dancing with a Stranger with Normani, this album had a bit of a rocky road to release. It shifted release dates a couple times, and it was initially supposed to come out in May before being moved to June. Initially, it was going to be released under the title To Die For, but in April, Sam announced that the record would be delayed again and that the name would be changed. The rationale behind that being that with the world in the midst of a global pandemic in COVID-19, Sam didn't exactly feel all that comfortable naming the record To Die For, which I definitely understand, and I do think that's a valid reason. But beyond changing the title and the cover art, Sam also used the delay as an opportunity to continue creating and working on the album. So now it's finally here. And while the base of the album is 11 tracks, the entirety of it is 17 tracks and 56 minutes because the final 6 songs on here are basically tracks that Sam had created and released prior to the delay of the record. So was it worth the wait? For the most part, yeah. I'm gonna start by talking about the bonus tracks since those were the pre-delay singles. In an old video, I did talk a little bit about Dancing with a Stranger, and I still do very much like that song. It's a more electronic, almost disco-influenced song with an absolutely killer chorus that's too easy to fall in love with, and Sam and Normani have incredible vocal chemistry too, making this a really wonderful track. And How Do You Sleep is another electronic bop. It's much softer, but it's got a twinkly instrumental that actually leads tastefully into the beat drop in the middle of the chorus. Sam also sounds lovely as usual, and their ability to craft a catchy chorus remains strong on this track. The original title song, To Die For, is a cut that works in Sam's wheelhouse as a pop ballad akin to Stay With Me, for example. What makes this song so appealing, though, is that Sam's vocals are as beautiful and elegant as ever, making this work just as well as many of their other ballads. I'm Ready, featuring Demi Lovato, is an insanely different turn for Sam. It's a much darker, more banging electronic pop song. I like this turn on the instrumental, and I think Sam and Demi both sound great with their vocals, but I do agree with some of the criticism I've previously heard about the chorus. It's not absolutely horrid, and I like some of the choir vocals on it, but I feel like it's so severely lacking in comparison to the verses. It doesn't hook as well as it should, unfortunately, and it kind of kills the song for me. That said, I'd love to hear these two collaborate again in the future, perhaps on a ballad where they can really shine vocally. Fire on Fire is a track Sam did for the BBC and Netflix miniseries Watership Down. Once again, it's another piano-driven ballad, but even so, it's another beautiful orchestral song built off of Sam's typically stellar vocals. And even if the song was made for a TV miniseries and that might make you think that it's kind of lazy, Sam nails it as per usual. And Promises is a Calvin Harris collaboration that naturally moves into more of an electronic dance sound compared to some of Sam's other stuff. I think the beat is pretty playful. Calvin Harris does a nice job producing it, and Sam does a wonderful job bouncing off of that, making this an enjoyable electro banger. So, judging off of the bonus tracks, this album would have been heading in a really good direction before the delay. Many of those singles are still solid hits that are very enjoyable, but naturally, with the album being delayed, a lot can change. So what came off of the new tracks on the album? Well, I can't sit here and tell you how much of the base material of this album was made after the delay, or what percentage of it is new or old material, but what I can say is that there are definitely a good handful of enjoyable tracks here, even if they don't quite hit as hard as some of Sam's bests. Some of the bonus tracks might have indicated this, but the album features a number of more danceable songs in comparison to what Sam has done before, and a number of them are pretty good. Diamonds, for instance, was a single that had a much bigger, more electronic sound to it, with some groovy guitars and a nice mix between some light vibes and more bumping bombast. Sam is game for this instrumental though, and they come through with very catchy vocal melodies that make it quite compelling. Another one is one of the many tracks on here that kind of blurs the line between Sam's two styles, as it's a little more electronic and slightly danceable, but it also carries that sad vibe and those heartbreaking lyrics that they're known for. Sam has called this their favorite song they've ever done, and I think it's definitely a high on the album. Their vocals match the emotional vibe very well. I think the instrumental is so ethereal and very lovely, and all around it's just pretty excellent. My Oasis, the lead-off single for the album, is another fusion of Sam's two sounds, and once again I think it's quite nice. It's equally chill but danceable with a few neat variations on the instrumental, and I love the vocal work of Sam as well as Burna Boy, who makes a small appearance but nevertheless makes it count, rounding out the song nicely. So Serious is a very sweet song where Sam tackles their mental health, and I love how points of the instrumental feel like an old video game. It's a very nice pop song with more great vocals from Sam, and I think the chorus on this track is one of my personal favorites on the entire record. It's just so immediate and memorable, and it perfectly hooks me into the song. Dance Till You Love Someone Else is an interesting transition, as Sam describes it as being a more dark, aggressive version of Dancing with a Stranger. This song is way more bombastic though, with a sort of entrancing electropop beat that's heavy on the reverb, almost as if it was made to be played in clubs with plenty of flashing lights. I think it sounds good, though the chorus can be a bit dull, and it could have been worked on more, though maybe the track will grow on me with a few more listens. Sam still does hit on some of their typical sad ballads though, like on the opening track Young, which kind of talks about how Sam's life changed after they rose to fame so quickly at 21. I do appreciate how raw the song is, as there's no instrumentation behind it whatsoever, and I know Sam's vocals are powerful, but I don't like some of the filters on them here. They just don't feel all that flattering, and the somewhat robotic nature of them takes away from some of the would-be beauty of the song. And I would honestly say that the rest of the ballads can be a little bit hit or miss for me. For the Lover That I Lost is actually a cover of a song that Celine Dion made on her last album. The song took a few listens to grow on me, but while it might not be one of Sam's best ballads, what really lifts it for me is how mesmerizing their vocals are. I've said it before, but Sam Smith can really sell a song on vocals alone, and this is another case of that. Breaking Hearts is a really sad song that probably could have been even more raw than it actually was, but it has a few snaps on the beat that make it a tiny bit more lively. Personally, while I like the writing, I think the hook is a little clumsy, and while Sam sounds great, I feel like this song is just itching to be a little bit more minimal. Take out the snaps and fix the chorus a bit, and this could easily be a high point on the album, kind of like the following track, Forgive Myself, which is easily one of the most heartbroken songs on here. The lyrics see Sam trying to find self-forgiveness after a breakup, and the song itself is a beautiful ballad with a light piano and the same intoxicating vocals that we've come to expect from Sam. It's definitely one of the better ballads on the bass version of the album. And the title track, Love Goes, features Labyrinth and is one of the most beautiful pieces here. Again, it's very raw with only the most minimal mixtures of piano and tiny percussion, at least up until the bombastic horn-filled finish in the final minute. It It works though, and I think the vocal interplay between Sam and Labyrinth is pretty stunning, making this another high point on the record. And the closer, Kids Again, is one of the biggest surprises here. Even though I know Sam is known for their ballads, I've never heard them go in a more acoustic direction like they do in this song. I was fine with that until the drums kicked in though. They made the song feel a bit too standard for me, and again, I would have liked it to be even more emotional than this. I think removing those drums could have helped with that. It's a decent finisher to the record, but I personally would have picked the title track to close it out. Overall, even though I liked quite a few songs on this album, and there are plenty of them under the favorite tracks in the description, I can't help but feel like Love Goes was a bit of a step back from the thrill of it all, and that much of my enjoyment of this album came from how great the pre-delay bonus tracks are. I feel like even though the base album has a number of enjoyable tracks, a few of them don't come close to the standouts of Sam's last two records. Even so, I do think Sam did a solid job with this album, doing what they can to blend the world of their ballads with some more danceable electronic tracks, and the result is that a number of the songs have decent production, and Sam's stunning vocals help to sell a number of them. I do think the more full-blown ballads can be a bit inconsistent, and some of them don't quite hit in the same way as a track like Burning from Sam's last album, but all in all, I can tell Sam put a good amount of love into this album, and I commend them for finally seeing it through to the finish line after such a difficult road to release. I also commend them for managing to make it good in spite of those difficulties, and I hope this album continues to bring them success just as their first two did. Overall, on my rating scale, I'm gonna say that Sam Smith's Love Goes is gonna get a good rating from me. Doesn't quite hit the high that The Thrill of It All did, might even be a little bit lower than In the Lonely Hour. But again, Sam did a nice job with this record, and after all the delays, I'm just happy that it turned out good. But that's not all the good music that we're going to be talking about this week, because to finish the video off, let's discuss the new Ariana Grande album, Positions. This is Ariana's 6th studio album and her first since last year's Thank You Next, itself a quick follow-up to 2018's Sweetener. In between this album and those two, Ariana also released K Bye For Now, a live album composed of 32 tracks worth of performances from her combined tour for Sweetener and Thank You Next. I never actually got to listen to that record since I don't get to listen to live albums all that much, but given how talented Ariana is and how great of a live performer she is, I can only imagine how amazing it sounded. And Ariana has kept herself very busy this year, reaching #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 twice with a pair of huge feature collaborations, those being the charity single Stuck With You with Justin Bieber and the single Rain On Me with Lady Gaga. Ariana has been on fire, and I personally have loved all of her studio albums up to this point. I reviewed them all between my blog and this YouTube channel, and so far 5 albums, all 5 have gotten excellent ratings from me. However, I wasn't expecting her to come through with another album this quickly, given that she tends to take a year or two off between album releases, not counting Thank You Next, which in itself was more of a therapeutic response to then recent events in her life. However, just last week, she announced the release of this record on her Twitter and then dropped the lead-off single, the title track Positions. I thought the track was kind of catchy, but not one of Ariana's best singles, though I was hoping it would grow on me in the context of the rest of the album. It's 14 tracks and 41 minutes, which is about the standard length for an Ariana Grande album, and once again, this is another Ariana album that I love. I mentioned earlier that I liked the lead-off single Positions when I first heard it, but didn't initially love it, but listening to it in the context of the album around it, I ended up liking it much more now than before. I think the beat is fantastic and the integration of guitars is pretty awesome. Side note, I had no idea London on the Track helped produce this, but he and the rest of his producers did a great job. Ariana obviously kills it vocally, and I think the chorus definitely grew on me a lot from my first listen, and that first single really leads the way into the rest of the great tracks this album comes through with. Shut Up kicks off the album as this light, sultry, plucky track built off of Ariana's beautiful vocals. Naturally, she kills it on the song, and even if it's just a short intro, the combination of her vocals and the violins are perfect. There's also the hilariously titled 34 plus 35, which in case you didn't know equals 69, which is a more bouncy song that delves into the album's central theme, sex. Yes, you've heard it before, and I'm sure you can assume it from the title, but this album is even more sex-driven than some of Ariana's previous music. Obviously, this isn't the first time Ariana's gotten sexy with her music, but this record is far more overt with it. Lyrically, I can tell you Ariana's not trying to clean this up for radio. She's getting much dirtier on us, but still, this song is super fun. I love the groovy instrumental, and I also kind of love hearing Ariana ask to be fucked in the daylight, but doing so in her usual vocal tone. She also does a little sing rapping on her final verse, and it actually sounds nice and meshes well with the song. Not every track on here is sex driven, though pretty much all of them do carry a a bit of a braggadocious, confident tone, like the track Just Like Magic, which is a lighter but still snappy song where Ariana celebrates her accomplishments up to this point. The song is confident, but it also carries a bit of a heavenly vibe that I really enjoy. 6:30 is a track that has some more glitchy electronic production, and it carries that same clever bounce that a lot of the other songs do. It's still super catchy, and as simple as the chorus is, it's very solid, and it's definitely a head naughty song. Also, this was the track that taught me that Ariana Grande likes video games, so that's dope. My Hair is a jump into New Jack Swing for Ariana, and naturally, she kills it with this one. She's always shown success with songs like this that sound like a bit of a throwback, and that doesn't change here. Her vocals are perfect for this kind of sound, and I also like the integration of her whistle notes as well. West Side is also a really dope jazz fusion song, as it slows things down but has a few neat twists in its production, notably with what sounds like some record scratches. And while Ariana's vocals are much softer, they still carry that sultry tone that she's known for. And Love Language is another great retro type of song that actually sounds a bit reminiscent of something Ariana would have put on one of her first two albums. It's snappy, I think the click-clacking feel of the percussion is really cool, and Ariana slides into the retro vibes with ease, making this a breezy but fun throwback. There's even a few features here, and looking at who Ariana joined forces with, I was even more excited, and it turns out that it was worth the excitement. Motive sees Doja Cat jump into the mix, and it even has a producer credit from Murda Beats. It's a bit darker, but it's still a pretty danceable banger that even has a bit of a hazy vibe to it. I love Ariana's very sticky chorus on this one, and Doja Cat's confident tone is a nice addition too. And I was also very excited for Off the Table, as it features none other than The Weeknd. You guys know that I love The Weeknd, and Love Me Harder still bangs to this day, so I was hyped when I heard these two were joining forces for this record. And let me tell you, it did not disappoint at all. This is a much slower, more reverb heavy song, but it is absolutely heaven sent, and the song takes on a more romantic feel than a lot of what else is here. Ariana and Abel have some incredible vocal chemistry, as you would expect from the two, and it's far and away my favorite song on the album. As I mentioned, this was the track I was most excited for, and it was everything I wanted it to be and then some. I actually cried during my first listen because I was so happy that this ended up being so great. What an excellent collab between two of my favorite artists. And Safety Net even features Ty Dolla $ign, which I thought was kind of funny when it was announced, because at the time that I saw the track list, I had just listened to Ty Dolla $ign's new album, and there's a lyric on the track Everywhere where he references Ariana. Looks like it was a sign of things to come. And it was a bit of a surprise to me. The track is this smooth, mellow bop with a really relaxed vibe, and while I initially wasn't sure how to feel about the chorus, I think the song really kicks up a notch when Ty comes in, because I think he and Ariana play off each other perfectly, and it makes this song even better. Really, I'd say that Nasty is probably the only song I'm not as crazy about on here. While it does carry that typical smooth vibe of Ariana's music, and the mix of R&B and trap drums is cool, I think the chorus is just a bit bland and not as catchy as some of the best songs on here. Otherwise though, the album ends as well as it starts. Obvious is somewhat lighter, but it does incorporate some of those trap sounds that we've heard out of Ariana before. The song also features one of my favorite choruses on the album. Ariana's vocal melodies are extremely catchy, and I love her jumps into her higher register throughout the chorus as well. It's a short track, but while it lasts, it is extremely satisfying. And the album's closer, POV, is also a bit slower, but it does build very well throughout, and it's a very sweet track as Ariana expresses her love for her significant other all throughout it. I think the strings are very varied, and Ariana's powerful vocals help round out this song and end the album wonderfully. Overall, while some might disagree, I think Ariana dropped another wonderful album with Positions. The record is far more carefree, romantic, and sex-driven than Ariana's last few projects, but honestly, that's not a bad thing. After all that she's had to go through, it's nice to see her making an album that returns to some form of normality, for lack of a better word. And fortunately, that return to normality doesn't make her music any worse. She still has an incredible knack for putting together catchy pop tunes that even mix trap and R&B sounds, and it's also nice seeing her come through with a few more throwbacks on here. I missed that in some of her recent albums, and it's nice to see it make a return. And even if the record is more sex-driven and dirty, I think Ariana has some good writing, and as per usual, her vocals are fantastic. She also once again reminds us that she has a knack for bringing the most out of her guest artists, and all of this combined makes Positions another winner for Ariana. Some might not enjoy it quite as much as her last few albums, but for me, this is another great record, and I'm happy to see Ariana back and putting out more wonderful music. Overall, on my rating scale, if you couldn't tell already, Ariana Grande's Positions is gonna get an excellent rating from me. 6 for 6, wow. Hey, I mean, I'm just being honest. If Ariana Grande wants to keep putting out amazing music, I'll keep giving her excellent ratings. So Ariana, keep up the amazing work. So yeah, that's this week's albums. Outside of the Trippie Redd album that I talked about at the beginning of the video, this was a pretty good week, and I can tell that both of these albums are gonna get plenty of longevity out of me. But as always, that's just my opinion. What did you guys think of these albums? Which of them did you listen to? Are you going to listen to any of them if you haven't already? Did you love them, hate them? Are you indifferent towards them? What's your favorite of them, your least favorite of them? What are your overall thoughts? Leave them down in the comment section. Let's keep this civil and have some fun as we like to do. If you guys want to hit like and subscribe, thank you. If not, it's no big deal. I totally understand. In terms of what's next, I'm not 100% sure what's coming out throughout November, but just looking at this list, it seems like next week Little Mix has a new album coming out. I'll try to get to that. Don't be surprised if there's not a ton of new album reviews this month, just because I have so many 10 years later videos on my plate, but I'll try to make sure I balance the two out. So stay tuned for those, but until next time, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.